So the story begins with our protagonist casually doing what he does best, grinding a game at the highest difficulty, and right now he's facing the final boss on the hardest level. Without hesitating, he drops his strongest fireball and completely wipes the boss out, and just like that, a notification pops up saying the master difficulty has been cleared. It makes sense because this guy is basically an unemployed final boss himself, just sitting there min-maxing everything. But then, something unexpected happens, the system suddenly appears again and offers a brand new difficulty called Developer Mode. Now obviously, instead of questioning it, he just goes straight for it, selects his main character named Calum, and then dumps all of his stat points into intelligence like a true min-max player. And right as he clicks start game, his monitor suddenly lights up and before he can even react, he gets sucked straight into the game. He opens his eyes in shock, completely disoriented, and the first thing he hears is someone yelling at him to wake up, calling him a piece of trash and saying he's about to be executed. But our protagonist just smiles, thinking this is all some kind of illusion or maybe just part of the game's intro. Then the guy in front of him suddenly knocks him down and calls him a crazy prisoner, and now he's starting to realize something feels off, because if this is a dream, then why does his body actually hurt? Not long after that, all the prisoners are gathered in front of a portal, and then a professor shows up and explains the situation. Basically, everyone here has been turned into slaves because of their crimes, and the only way to earn their freedom is by clearing a labyrinth. If they survive, they get money, and with enough money, they can buy their freedom back. Simple, but also completely insane. So our protagonist ends up entering the labyrinth with 3 other people, and instead of panicking he stays calm, trying to analyze his teammates and figure out what kind of abilities they have. But yeah, that plan immediately falls apart. One of them, a skinny guy, completely loses it, starts screaming that they're all going to die while laughing like a maniac, and the fat guy next to him is so scared he can't even move at first. Then suddenly he just snaps and runs straight into a dark corridor, and yeah, 1 second later, a sword goes straight through his body. And that's when things get even worse, because goblins finally show up. The skinny guy goes even crazier, but before he can do anything, a spear flies in and pierces his head instantly. Meanwhile, the goblins are just smiling like they found new toys to play with, and without wasting time, they rush straight toward our protagonist. Now this is where it gets critical, because my guy completely freezes. He has no idea what to do, and he's literally about to get his head cut off. But at the last second, his skill suddenly activates, Huglas of Turns, a broken ability that lets him stop time for 60 seconds. The catch is, every movement he makes consumes points, and right now, he only has 4 points available. So yeah, my guy locks in. He goes all in and channels everything into one massive fireball. The moment time resumes, he instantly burns all the goblins to ashes like they were nothing. After that, he takes a deep breath, because he fully understands now that if he dies here, it's game over for real. Then, without wasting time, he starts looting whatever useful items he can find from the dead prisoners, because at this point, survival comes first. And right after that he turns his attention to an elf nearby and casually asks, "Hello ladies, what kind of skill do you have, and is it useful for me?" She responds that she has a skill called lightning shock, but she's never actually used it before. He's clearly not impressed, but at the same time, it's still better than nothing. So now, the two of them decide to move together and focus on finding a way out of the labyrinth, and deep down, our protagonist makes a promise to himself that he's going to get revenge on whoever dragged him into this messed up game in the first place. A few years ago, the labyrinth suddenly erupted, and yeah, it wasn't just a small incident, all kinds of brutal monsters poured out from inside and basically started destroying the entire world in this game. And because of that chaos, the system they came up with is honestly messed up. They started sending slaves into the labyrinth to filter out talented individuals, basically turning it into a survival test where only the useful ones make it out. Now back to the present, the elf girl finally thanks him and introduces herself, saying her name is Yernal, and my guy just casually responds like, "Chill, don't be so formal, the name's Calum." Then Yernal starts explaining her situation, saying she was set up, she used to work at a package delivery center, but turns out the packages were illegal drugs, and because of that, she ended up being labeled a criminal and turned into a slave. And right in the middle of that conversation, something weird happens, because suddenly Calum's skill activates on its own. He instantly panics, thinking he might have triggered a trap or stepped on something, but instead of freaking out too much, he quickly uses that moment to scan his surroundings. And this is where it gets interesting because he realizes there are actually 4 types of traps inside this labyrinth. You've got spike traps, nail bombs that explode, gas traps that release poison, and pit traps that literally collapse the floor and drop you to a lower level. But here's the problem, his time is running out, so without wasting a second, he quickly steps in a precise spot to suppress the trap. And the moment time starts flowing again, Yernal suddenly stumbles and gets confused, asking him what he's doing. My guy immediately shuts it down and says, "Shut up, Yernal, just do exactly what I say, you just stepped on a bomb." So now the situation gets tense. Calum tells her to go grab a wooden barrel from the path behind them, and she immediately runs off to get it. But then, time passes and 30 minutes go by, and she still hasn't come back. So now he starts thinking, did she get killed by a monster, or did she fall into a trap somewhere? But just as that thought kicks in, her silhouette finally appears from the darkness, and she apologizes, saying the barrel was way too heavy for her to carry alone. So they quickly place the wooden barrel over the trap to hold it down, and Calum uses his magic to carefully move it into position. But the moment the barrel shifts even a little, the trap instantly activates, and yeah, a massive explosion goes off. Luckily, they manage to get through it and continue moving, trying to find a way out of the labyrinth. But of course, it's not that easy, because more goblins suddenly show up and block their path again. So without hesitation, Calum activates his skill, stops time once more, and fires off multiple fireballs at the same time. And the moment time resumes, all those spells hit at once, instantly burning the goblins into nothing but ash. Now Yurnal is completely shocked. She's like, how are you even casting magic without chanting any spells? And at the same time, she starts losing confidence in herself, saying she's basically useless. But Calum doesn't buy that for a second. Instead he asks her a random question, how high can you jump? And his logic is simple, if she's really an elf, her physical abilities should be way above average. Yurnal answers that she can jump around 4 meters high, and my guy just goes, damn girl, that's higher than Ronaldo, which honestly catches her off guard. Then he hands her a bow, saying it probably suits her better than a magic staff, and she accepts it right away like, alright, I'll take it boss. Meanwhile, Calum takes her staff for himself, clearly planning to make better use of it. But then, just as they're about to move again, Yurnal suddenly says that someone is following them. At first, Calum doesn't see anyone at all, but she insists she can hear footsteps coming from behind. So to test her, Calum picks up a few stones and throws them, then asks how many he threw. Yurnal answers immediately, saying there are 3 stones about 4 steps away from her, and that's when it clicks, she has some kind of sound mapping ability. So Calum asks the next question, how many people are following them, and she says around 4, and they're moving fast. Realizing they're being chased, the two of them quickly run, pass through a shallow pool of water, and then hide behind a wall, waiting for their pursuers to show up. And sure enough, figures start emerging from the shadows, and as they get closer, Calum steps forward and casually asks, what's your business, old man? And without hesitation, the old man makes his intention clear, he's targeting the elf girl, telling Calum to hand her over to them. So now the situation gets tense really fast, because the old man makes it clear he wants the elf girl, and in return he says he'll let our protagonist live. He's completely confident, mainly because low-level magic won't even scratch his barrier. But even with that pressure, Calum stays calm, he's not panicking, he's already thinking ahead, trying to figure out the best possible move. Then the old man throws in another offer, saying, why not just join their party and make it a group of 5, suggesting they can just share the elf and have some fun. At that point, it's obvious what kind of people they are. But my guy is fully locked in, no hesitation, no compromise, he's sticking with Yurnal and surviving on his own terms. That answer immediately pisses the old man off, so he orders his men to kill Calum on the spot. And right there, our protagonist activates his skill, and time instantly freezes. Now this is where things get tactical, because instead of going straight for raw damage, he uses lightning shock first, targeting the water beneath the criminal's feet. And then, without wasting a second, he stacks it up by preparing a fireball aimed directly at them. So when time starts moving again, everything hits at once, the electricity surges through the water and shocks all of them instantly, their weapons drop to the ground, and right after that, the fireball connects, triggering a massive explosion that fills the entire area with thick smoke. And suddenly, another fireball comes flying straight at him. The explosion hits hard, and at this point, everyone should be down. Yurnal doesn't hesitate either, she follows up by firing arrows into the smoke, making sure no one gets back up. Calum is still catching his breath, trying to process everything, when Yurnal calmly tells him she already shot all of them. And once the smoke finally clears, yeah, it's over. Every single criminal is dead. And what's even crazier is that Yurnal pulled it off with just 2 arrows, which honestly says a lot about her potential. But then, surprisingly, the bald guy is still barely alive, mumbling in confusion, asking what kind of monster Calum is, how he can cast magic without even chanting. But he's already too far gone, his injuries are way too severe, and not long after that he dies. So after the fight, Calum immediately switches mindset back to survival mode, and starts collecting anything useful from the bodies. Yurnal finds a bag, and inside there's a bunch of basic items like a book, a handkerchief, a pot, a knife, some rope, and a wallet. Then they find an ID card, and the name on it is a bison. From that alone, Calum figures this guy was probably just another victim who got robbed by those criminals. And after seeing all of this, the reality of the situation hits even harder. Calum realizes he needs to get stronger, because this isn't just a game anymore, and if he's not careful, he's actually going to die in this messed up world. And at this point, he can't deny it anymore, this so-called game is completely real. So after everything they've been through, Calum finally suggests they take a break, and honestly, Yurnal doesn't even hesitate to agree because they've been walking for hours at this point. They set up a small fire, start preparing something simple to eat, and end up sharing the bread they found earlier in a bison's bag. After that, Calum decides to get some rest, but the moment he falls asleep, something unexpected happens. He enters what feels like a rest mode, and a notification suddenly pops up, showing that he's leveled up to level 3. Not only that, he gets 2 stat points, and without overthinking it, he immediately dumps everything into intelligence again, staying consistent with his build. And this is where things get even more interesting, because he realizes he can now check the status of his party members as well. So he looks at Yernal, and sure enough, she's also reached level 3 and gained 2 stat points. Her agility is already naturally high, typical for an elf, so Calum decides to optimize that further and pushes her agility up to 10, basically turning her into a much faster and more efficient fighter. Then, when he wakes up, he's back in reality, and without wasting time, he tells Yernal to go to sleep while he takes over watch duty. Yernal is completely exhausted at this point, so she happily agrees and immediately knocks out. Meanwhile, Calum sets up a shield near the edge of the wall and starts testing his strength. He casts a fireball spell straight at it, and a massive explosion follows, but instead of being surprised, he just stays calm, because the fact that he can now break through that shield means one thing: he's definitely getting stronger. Then suddenly, the path in front of them splits into 3 different routes, but before they can decide which way to go, they notice another party gathered near what looks like the exit gate. The group spots Calum and Yernal and immediately asks if they're from the Magic Academy slave team. Calum casually confirms it like, yeah, that's right. Then things get a bit tense, because the group starts talking among themselves about someone named Bison, clearly worried. So Calum steps in and asks if they lost a mage, and they confirm it. They explain that they encountered a Black Hornet on level 1, and their teammate was killed during the fight. But apparently, their priest managed to bind his soul, and they're planning to revive him once they successfully escape the labyrinth. Now this is where Calum connects the dots, because he immediately guesses the boss behind the exit gate, asking if it's a venomic spider. And yeah, that completely shocks them. They're like, how does a slave even know that? Calum then explains it calmly, saying the spider constantly shoots deadly webs, and if you step on one even once, your body gets completely bound until you die. Because of that, their strategy is simple but effective. They need a fire mage to burn the webs first, and once the webs are gone, they can take down the spider. Classic approach. So with no better options, the dwarf in the group offers Calum a spot in their party. But Calum doesn't even need time to think about it, he immediately refuses. The reason is simple: only 4 people are allowed to pass through the exit gate, and their party already has 4 members, meaning there's only 1 slot available. And that basically means one thing: if he joins them, he has to leave Yernal behind. And yeah, he says it straight, so you're telling me to abandon her? So the dwarf makes it clear from the start, they only need 1 mage, no more, no less. And yeah, for a moment, Calum actually considers it because logically, this is a solid opportunity. But even then, he stays locked in. He's not abandoning Yernal, no matter what. Instead, he comes up with a different play and goes straight to the point, asking, what if you just hire me instead? The dwarf pauses for a second and goes, that's interesting, young man, clearly not expecting that kind of response. But Calum doesn't waste time, he immediately sets his price, 10,000 gold, take it or leave it. Now this isn't random, he already calculated everything. That amount is enough to buy his freedom and still have enough left to get proper gear once he reaches the city. Meanwhile, the party starts hesitating, trying to decide if it's even worth it. But here's the problem: they have a priest in their group, which means they're definitely carrying money, and more importantly, they're running out of time. Their dead teammate needs to be revived soon, or his soul might disappear permanently. And just to lock everything in, Calum adds one more condition: they all have to swear an oath in front of the priest, under the name of their god, to keep their promise. Surprisingly, the priest doesn't object at all. The dwarf still tries to negotiate, dropping the price to 9,000 gold, but my guy doesn't budge much, he just goes, 9,500, final offer. At that point, they don't really have a choice, so the dwarf accepts. So they form the oath right there, making it official, and with that settled, they all move toward the boss room together. The moment they step inside, the entire place is covered in thick spider webs, and yeah, it instantly feels dangerous. Then suddenly, the spider lets out a loud, piercing screech, and without warning, it fires a venomous web straight at them. The dwarf barely manages to block it in time, but the monster doesn't stop there, it keeps shooting web after web, trying to trap everyone. And that's when Calum steps in, activating his skill and freezing time once again. Within that short window, he unleashes multiple fireballs all at once, setting everything up perfectly. Then time resumes, and all the fireballs hit at the same moment, blasting straight into the spider and burning through the webs like nothing. The entire party is shocked. They can't even process how a so-called slave is casting that many fireballs without chanting. The spider gets slammed down hard, and that's their opening. Everyone moves in at once. The Tiger Man charges forward with his blade and slices off one of the spider's front legs, throwing it completely off balance. The monster lets out a painful screech and flips over, exposing its underside. Right on cue, the priest casts a defensive spell to protect the group, and before the spider can do anything desperate, Calum immediately follows up with ice magic, targeting its abdomen to prevent it from exploding as a last resort. Then, without hesitation, he orders the dwarf to finish it. The dwarf jumps up high, raising his massive axe, and with one clean, powerful swing, he brings it down and splits the spider in half, killing it instantly.